Hello, fellow patriots, and welcome to episode 14, The Truth About Syria. The retaliatory action against the Syrian airbase responsible for gassing the citizens opposing President Assad has finally made the statement of where the line is drawn with President Trump. To understand the goals and concerns in Syria, Tony's put together a great presentation including Oliver North, Senator McCain, and Senator Graham. Now, on with the show.
Welcome to Patriot Radio America. And now your host, Tony Bridling.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you guys are having a great day. Thank you so much for stopping by. We have a great program lined up for you, a ton of information. And so this is the challenge that I want to put in front of people. You know, some of the issues going on with Syria and how it's categorized and how it's broken up in subcategories. Let me give you an example. If I was to come up to you and ask you, you know, what's the most important relationship that Assad has? Is it between Assad and Russia or Assad and Iran? And it's not the idea that you'd be right or wrong. You know, a lot of people, it's like, well, who cares? Well, to be able to react what's going on in Syria, what it is that we need to do and we're going to do. You have to know that type of stuff because everything has to be categorized in perspective so we can handle things in perspective. What about, you know, can you tell me the difference between ISIS and, you know, the Shia revolution? Few people can, most people can't. That's what I found out. What's the difference between the opposition in Syria, ISIS, and the Shia revolution? All right, there's three categories there. So that means there's three problems, all in one little country. Then you have the relationships that are being influenced by those three categories between Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Russia. And, you know, obviously you have the United States and now Turkey's into the mix. So that's what I wanted to, you know, it's amazing. I've known this stuff and I knew how to categorize it correctly. And that's fine. But what's strange is there's three interviews that came out. Two of them are, one's from McCain, one's from Senator McCain, one's from Senator Lindsey Graham, and then another one from Oliver North, which is just a fun one. We're not going to point out the highlights on the Oliver North one, but you want to listen to it because it's very good. Because here's the thing, you guys. What intrigues me is that these issues have been on the table for even before Obama was in office. All right, so this stuff's been going on for a while. But how is it that all of a sudden these guys just come out and lay everything on the table? Not only that, the interviews that they go through, there's no opposition at all. They're you know, the people who host the interviews just let them go and let them say what they wanted to say and what they needed to say. And guess what? They categorized everything. And it's very, very important that, and it's not just a coincidence that these guys had these interviews and they're laying down what needs to be done, how it's going to be done, and why they think they need to do it right after we just destroyed an airbase in Syria. So very intriguing, very important stuff, and it's unbelievable that it actually came out. Having said that, on, you know, the issue, especially with McCain, I want to be able to throw this out there on a personal note, okay? You know, an opinion here. I was part of the Republican Party's movement in Arizona to put Senator John McCain in the Rhino status. What's Rhino mean, by the way? It means Republican in name only. And we voted for that. And guess what? It passed. Because we felt that he betrayed us on domestic issues. On, you know, he wanted to give amnesty. Remember that quote that he gave out in that interview? And I don't have it. I don't even want to mess with it because he's definitely changed his mind since then. But, you know, what did he say? You know, I get it. We'll build a wall. You know what I mean? You know, we had what makes us angry is that you were a leader and we voted you in to protect us, and we're having to force you through votes to realize what you're doing is absolutely wrong. Again, here's the issue, you guys, on that. And nobody said anything about immigration. Nobody said that we don't want immigration or we don't believe in immigration. We don't believe in illegal immigration. That's what we don't want. And that's it. That's all it was. People from other countries to this day are still free to be able to register and sign up and try to come to the United States of America. And guess what? We hope you make it. We love you. We want you here. And we hope that you make it. And it's always been that, by the numbers. Let's be accountable for everything that we do. And I know we're not perfect. None of us are perfect. So we don't want to be, Nazis about it. But that was the issue. So I've always had an issue with McCain on that. But on foreign policy, it's completely opposite. And so there's a lot of garbage out there on McCain on foreign policy, and it comes from the Putin lovers. So at the end of this show, I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end of this program. And then I'm also going to do a video on specifically on people going after him. And it's not because I'm defending him. I want to prove a point that these countries like Russia, when somebody's hurting them, that's who they go after. And they have their minions here in the United States. And how do these people hide? They hide, well, I own guns. I believe in the Constitution. And then they start attacking. We've talked about this before. They start attacking American institutions, and specifically the institutions that make us great, why we're on top. And they do it again and again and again. I want to be able to point some of that stuff out a little bit later, or actually in a different program. Lindsey Graham's a good enough guy. He a little bit kind of like McCain. I think that he would have been influenced to just open the border up, maybe not flood the borders like Hillary Clinton wanted, but still, in my view, a direct threat to the United States of America. And these guys have changed their minds, by the way. That's not an issue right now. We don't even need to go back, because it doesn't matter what they think, because Donald Trump and his administration are there, and it's a completely different ballgame. So bear with us, you guys. I'm going to go into a commercial. We're going to come back. We're going to go right into the interview with McCain. And after the interview, we're going to go over the highlights. But listen to what these guys say, because you're going to get a world-class education, which is very rare. Like I said, it is rare, all right? Most of the interviews that are out there are absolute garbage, because the left and the right, the questions that they ask are, most of them are retarded. Has nothing to do with the real issues. And if they do ask a question about the issue, they never let whoever they bring onto the show to finish or to make to make a real point. So here we go, you guys. Go to the commercial. We come right back to interview with John McCain, and then I'll do a little bit of commentary on it. Thanks all.
Everybody faces the inevitables, death and taxes. But what about the greatest fear of all, outliving your retirement? How much is enough when facing the desires, health considerations, and legacy of your life? Do you have enough set aside or invested to meet your personal goals? And when should you get serious about it? If your answer is now, then welcome to SimTrade Pro, your only source for the fastest investment programs, retirement, and tax planning resources. SimTrade Pro offers options to achieve, protect, and retain the financial security you need to make your golden years a reality. That's www.simtradepro.com. The funny name, with all the answers.
The use of media materials is protected by the Fair Use Clause of the U.S. Copyright Act of 1976, which allows for the rebroadcast of copyrighted materials for the purpose of commentary, criticism, or education.
Senator, thanks very much for coming in. Do you believe that Russia played an actual role in the delivery of those chemical weapons to kill those civilians, including a lot of children the other day, that they were involved or at a minimum knew about it?
I would imagine that they would probably know about it, since they are allies of Bashar Assad, but they're the ones that use the precision weapons against hospitals in Aleppo. Look, They're as bad as Bashar Assad. Come on, they've helped them with the barrel bombs. They bailed them out time after time. But especially, again, it was Russian aircraft with precision weapons that specifically targeted hospitals. You'd send drones over, identify them, and then attack them.
So Putin had promised the U.S. that they would do whatever was necessary to remove all of Syria's chemical weapons stockpiles a few years back, right?
Yeah, that was another great victory of the Obama administration and John Kerry. They used to brag about their failure to act after they said they were gonna. You know, there's
the red line.
Yeah, the red line. There's one thing worse than not acting, and that's to say you're going to act and then not act, and that's what Obama and Kerry did.
So if Bashar al-Assad has committed war crimes, and you believe he has, right?
Sure.
So what you're saying is Putin has committed war crimes in Syria as well.
Certainly complicit. Is certainly complicit. I'm sure you saw the front page story of the Wall Street Journal, a terrible story about the prisons in Damascus and the thousands of people that are starved and beaten and assaulted and killed. Look, this is really the quintessence of evil. We grow a little numb to it. And then we see these pictures which break the hearts of all of us, but that goes on every day. And I think it's terrible. But I also think it's terrible when a barrel bomb is dropped, which is filled with shrapnel, which flies in all directions and wounds and kills people as well. And frankly, one hell of a lot more people have been killed by barrel bombs than have been killed by chemical weapons. So let's draw a line and say, stop. Stop your air attacks. Stop them.
So what's the next step? What do you think the President of the United States needs to do now that he has done something the Obama administration refused to do for so many years, hit any Syrian military target, only going after ISIS in Syria, but not the regime?
I think we should stay after ISIS. We can walk and chew gum. We should continue to take Mosul and ISIS and the long struggle we're going to have with radical Islam, which is metastasizing as we speak. But at the same time, we should tell Bashar Assad that and Vladimir Putin, they've got to stop slaughtering their people. And that means grounding their air force. And that way, I believe that we can end arming and equipping of the Free Syrian Army, what's left of it, and a safe zone. One of the things you can cure this problem with refugees that our correspondent just talked about is to have a safe zone where they can go to where they're not going to be bombarded with barrel bombs.
But if the U.S. steps up this military action against the Bashar al-Assad regime in Syria, aren't you worried about potentially a direct confrontation with the Russians?
It's the Russians who came in to bail out Bashar Assad. It seems to me it's their responsibility, not ours.
They show no signs of leaving. The Iranians and their militia supporters, they show no signs of leaving. If the U.S. gets deeply involved in this, potentially this could be a huge, huge conflict.
Potentially, it could also be the continued slaughter of hundreds of thousands of people. Barrel bombs doing the same thing you saw done to the tragic story of the children. The Iranians, with their continued assertion of superiority and supremacy in the region, and more violence and killing. In other words, we've got choices. If you think the last 8 years were a good idea, then let's keep doing it. If you don't, then we ought to back the president, but also recognize this is the beginning. This is only the first step. If we want to succeed, we're going to have to step by step do a lot more than this.
So what you're saying is a lot more than just Tomahawk cruise missiles going in there. You want warplanes to go in there with pilots. They have air defense systems. They could be endangered. But are you also saying ground troops, U.S. ground troops, need to go in there and help save these people?
I would say that we need to have some advise and assist people, just as right now in Syria we have American troops that are helping those who are taking Raqqa.
There are about 1,000 U.S. troops.
I wouldn't even
in Syria.
Bashar Assad would not be overthrown by American troops. It would by a trained and equipped Free Syrian Army from a safe zone that would prevail. The only reason why Bashar Assad is in power today is because of Russia and Iran, certainly not because of Syrians. So I think it's a good beginning. It sends a tremendously important signal. I'm glad the president did it. But to think that this is the end, a one strike to one airfield is frankly an inaccurate
So you're
depiction of
hoping
the
for a lot
situation.
more.
Yes, but let's see. I think I'm hoping for more, and we need to do more, but let's see what the reaction is. Let's see what this is, as you saw from a person who came on your program. This has invigorated those people who have been subjected to Bashar Assad's cruelty now for 8 years without any real response. So let's take it step by step, but let's recognize this is only the beginning.
Are we seeing a new Donald Trump? Because during his private years, during the campaign, during the transition, even early on in his presidency, he was always trying to make very, very nice to the Russians. And all of a sudden, he goes in there last night with these Tomahawk cruise missiles. And it could be, at least by proxy or indirectly, an attack on the Russians themselves.
Wolf, there's a great deal of difference, as you know, between a candidate without the responsibility and the awesome responsibility of a president of the United States. And I talked to the president on the phone. He was deeply moved.
When did you talk to the president?
Were, the morning after it happened. And he was deeply moved, as all of us were, at the plight of those poor children. And you could see that in his remarks. And as President of the United States, you have to look at these issues in a more somber and sober way. And I think that's what he's doing. And he's surrounded by people who give him the best advice. I'm talking about his national security team, McMaster, Mattis, and Dan Coates, Kelly. Those are really good, strong people.
It looks like he's been not just dramatically influenced by these pictures, but by these military advisors that you appreciate, that you admire. But I guess the whole notion of him so dramatically changing, this has been going on for 6 years. 400, maybe 500,000 people have been killed, and a lot of children have been killed, and millions have been made homeless. And the question is, where has he been all of these years? You've been concerned about that.
He's been a candidate and not president. He's been president for 70 or 80 days or whatever it is. That's the length of time. For 8 years, Barack Obama sat by and watched this happen to much, and after 8 years of that, it's going to take more than one airstrike in one base in order to turn it around. But I think it's the right thing to do, but it's only the first thing to do.
President Obama did ask Congress for authorization. He didn't get it from, you're giving me that, you're not impressed by that.
I'm not impressed by that. The president told me and Lindsey Graham he was going to act. He didn't say he was going to go to Congress and ask for permission. He called us over in the Oval Office and said, "They've done it. I'm going to act, and you guys can count on it." So, and then of course, but he shouldn't have said it unless he was sure that he would get the approval of Congress. Wolf, if that was one of the reasons for him, one of the conditions for him to act. He should have never announced to the world that we were going to act.
Tell me a little bit more about the phone conversation you had with the president. Did you emerge convinced the two of you were on the same page as far as Syria is concerned?
I got off the phone to knowing that the president was deeply concerned and deeply moved at these attacks which killed these children. And you could see from his remarks that he made announcing those airstrikes. And I think that he is, like a lot of presidents, growing in the job and recognizing the enormity of his responsibilities. And I'm glad that he seems to rely on that national security team that you and I talked about earlier. That's as good a team as I've ever seen.
Were you surprised by his decision last night? Did it surprise you when you heard that U.S. Tomahawk cruise missiles were launched against that airbase?
No, because I got a call before the launch from Mattis and also from Kelly, but when I talked to him the morning before, I could tell that he was deeply concerned. Now, to the point where I thought it was entirely possible that he would decide to act on the advice of his national security team.
Does the president need congressional authorization for the use of military force against Bashar al-Assad's regime, a formal piece of legislation? Does he need it right now to take the kind of action you want?
He does not. President Reagan didn't need it when, after the bombing of a disco in Berlin that killed Americans striking Libya. But if this is a long-term campaign, then I think we ought to examine it. But I'll tell you the practical problems. The practical problems is, and I've dealt with this issue for a long time, and that is it's called the War Powers Act, is the president is the commander-in-chief. And he proposes, Congress disposes as far as money is concerned. But as far as the actual mechanics of the war are concerned, there's never been agreement. The War Powers Act has never been challenged in the courts because every president, Republican and Democrat, has been afraid that it's going to be ruled constitutional.
You totally disagree with your Republican colleague, Senator Rand Paul, on this issue.
I always do.
Not the first time. I'll read to you what statement he released. While we all condemn the atrocities in Syria, the United States was not attacked. The president needs congressional authorization for military action as required by the Constitution, and I call on him to come to Congress for a proper debate. Our prior interventions in this region have done nothing to make us safer, and Syria will be no different. Your reaction?
I don't really react to Senator Paul. We're just too different, and he doesn't have any real influence in the United States Senate.
But he's not alone. There are other senators and members of the House who agree with him that the president needs that kind of authorization.
I would be glad to discuss that issue with the people as I have for years.
So you don't even want to respond to that?
Pardon me, I don't pay any attention, frankly, to what Senator Paul says.
Well, tell me why you disagree with him so much.
Because he's wrong.
Just on this issue, a whole bunch of other issues?
Every other issue that I know of that has to do with national security.
His argument, and those who are like him in the House and the Senate, they say, look at the disaster that's unfolded, for example, in Libya. The U.S. launched Tomahawk cruise missiles to try to get rid of Gaddafi. And it's a failed state now. ISIS has a big chunk of Libya.
Sure.
And they go back to the war to get rid of Saddam Hussein, who was a very bad guy, as we all know. But look at the disaster over these years in Iraq.
Well, I'd be glad to take a trip down memory lane with you.
And they want, and the point, though, the point that they're making is the United States should simply stay out of these areas. It's going to be a disaster. That's the point they make.
That point, obviously, is a very different version of history. You want to take Libya? After Gaddafi was killed, Lindsey Graham, Joe Lieberman, and I wrote about it. We begged him. You got to rebuild the country. You can't walk away. If you walk away, then bad things happen, and that's what happened. We walked away, thanks to Barack Obama. As far as Iraq is concerned, we had it won, thanks to the surge. David Petraeus, one of the great generals of our time. It was done. And what did we do? Pull everybody out. We pulled everybody out. We predicted what was going to happen. Wolf, the facts on the ground are what dictated those failures, and failure of leadership for 8 years. And we had both of them won, especially the war in Iraq, where David Petraeus and Ryan Crocker, they won. And Iraq was doing fine. And then they decided to pull everybody out. By the way, Afghanistan, 15 years later, our commanding general in Afghanistan says what? We're in a stalemate. We're in a stalemate. Why? Because their strategy was don't lose, okay? We can win in Afghanistan. We could have won, we did win in Iraq, and we could have maintained that if we'd have had I'll be glad to go back through all of these with you. But the fact is, if the United States had not intervened in Afghanistan, then obviously we would have then allowed the attacks of 9/11 to go unanswered. I don't think most of Americans wanted that to happen.
I think everybody wanted to go after bin Laden and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan.
Sure.
But then Iraq came into the picture, and then Libya and all of these other. Let's not go down memory lane right now. But I do want you to respond. I do want you to respond to Hillary Clinton, what she said today about the president's action. Listen to this.
The action taken last night needs to be followed by a broader strategy to end Syria's civil war. I hope this administration will move forward in a way that is both strategic and consistent with our values. And I also hope that they will recognize that we cannot in one breath speak of protecting Syrian babies and in the next close America's doors to them.
Sure, my first response is that I wish he would have said, I wish that Barack Obama had taken the advice and I and David Petraeus and Bob Gates gave him back in 2013, and then we wouldn't have had to worry about that. Second of all, yes, we should examine people's credentials, but let's have a safe zone, which we have been advocating all these years, and she advocated to the President of the United States, where these refugees can go. And let's protect them.
Should President Trump reverse his position on barring Syrian refugees from coming to the United States?
I think he should. He is correct in saying that people should be vetted, But, and I believe our interpreters especially should be able to come to this country, and I think there ought to be significant vetting, but win the conflict. The refugees are the result of failed policies and failed leadership. They're not the cause of it. So let's go back to the cause, and that is allowing Bashar Assad with the Russians, with Hezbollah, with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and have been responsible for the slaughter of over 400,000 people and 6 million refugees. And that will continue as long as Bashar Assad is allowed to continue to slaughter his citizens.
We're out of time, but in the interim, while the war is going on, should some of those Syrian refugees, kids, for example,
absolutely,
women, be allowed to come to the United States?
Absolutely, as long as they are vetted. People are coming out of Raqqa as we speak that their mission is to get the United States and commit acts of terror. We have that obligation as well.
Senator McCain, good to have you here in the situation.
Exchanges.
No, the exchanges are very good. I appreciate it very much, and we welcome you back anytime.
Thanks, Will.
Welcome back. So great interview. Very informative, but I want to be able to point a couple of things out. And the first one is on the question on we suspect Russia may have been involved in the chemical attacks, and Pentagon is still looking into it. All right, so what are they? I mean, this is more than one incident, so it's going to be a little bit of a repeat later on some of the highlights. You guys, Russians know when we use drones. They know what drones we use. Everybody can see it. They really can't do anything about it. We know the drones that they use. Israel, if they use drones, we know exactly what they look like. It doesn't matter. And so there's, what happened over what you're watching with the chemical attack is the hospitals after the chemical attack, there was Russian drones. Next thing you know, they bombed the hospital where, so that's the type of stuff that's going on. And there's more than one incident where this happened. And that's why it's like, okay, look, there's too many coincidences. It could be a joint operation. Maybe that the Russians didn't know that the Syrians were going to use chemical weapons. But you guys, come on. That's ridiculous. And so there's just a question there. No proof yet. No proof. I haven't seen any proof. We want to go by empirical data, right? And so there's no, there might be a question, but there's not enough information for accusation. So he just pointed that out because the Pentagon's looking into it. Second point is Russia bombed hospitals in Aleppo. Russia assisted in the creation of barrel bombs. Russian drones have showed up before at hospitals, before a hospital was bombed, and then after the hospital was bombed, the Russian jets and drones showed back up. Actually, after the hospital was bombed by Russian jets, the drones showed back up. And you guys, this is easy stuff to see, all right? It's not a mystery. That's why it's kind of strange you go on the internet and you read these comments that are out there. It's like, well, where's the proof? Where's that? You guys, they have the proof, all right? It's not a conspiracy theory. Think about it. If you put things in timeline, this is the fourth time they've used chemicals. And then we drew a line in the sand, and this is the third time after we drew that line in the sand that they violated. And I want to point another thing out because I've been reading on the comments on some of the articles on this out there, and you got this naive question, or I don't know where it comes from, but you have these dorks out there that are saying, hey, look, there's absolutely no motivation at all or no strategic reason at all for the Syrians to do a chemical attack. They're winning the war, so why would they expose themselves? Why would they do that? They knew there was going to be a reaction from the United States. Well, you guys, no, they did not know there was going to be a reaction from the United States because they got away with it twice already. This was the third time. The Russians are there, and Iran's there saying, hey, don't worry, Americans are a bunch of chicken shits. We can do this stuff all day long. Look at, we've done it, They didn't need to ask Russia or Iran anything. They just assumed. Well, this time they assumed incorrectly, didn't they? And so what's the other accusation in that little part? It's like they had no strategic, why would they do that? You dorks, it's a weapon. They're in a war. What do you mean? What type of, they didn't have some type of, there's no strategic advantage using chemical weapons. Why would you have chemical weapons in the first place? That's what you use it for. So what are they? They're in a war, and they're just about to kick all the opposition out of these cities. And so they thought they would kind of, seal the deal by dropping chemical weapons, because it's a psychological effect, and it also kills their enemy. That's one of the most asinine statements I've seen these conspiracy theory loving left throw out there. It's like, there's no upside to it. Well, there is an upside to it. It's a weapon. It kills their enemies. That's the upside, you dorks. I mean, look, we're all allowed to ask questions, but my God, get with it. Get with it. That's very, very strange. It's not strange. It's actually stupid. It's actually very, very stupid. So, what happened right after we bombed the airbase in Syria? They bombed the same exact spot they bombed before with the chemical weapons. They just bombed them with regular bombs. So, there's the upside on using those too, right? Unbelievable. So that actually kind of cuts off the conspiracy theory. It's like, well, maybe the United States set this up so we can have an excuse to go into Syria. Think about this, everybody. We bombed an airbase because we responded to a chemical attack, and we told them not to use those chemicals. And everybody's like, well, we might have set that up. Well, then why did Syria bomb the exact same spot 2 days later? You see what I'm saying? None of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. And it's not a conspiracy. It's right there for everybody to see. And if you want to choose to, go off into la la land and believe the unknown and actually try to let people know that you know what's going on based on an assumption, because you don't. And by the way, most of that rhetoric is coming from the Putin lovers. They have their own minions out there that are trying to spin things in a certain way, but it's a ridiculous question. Anyways, McCain states the main objectives of the United States in the Middle East is take out Assad and take out ISIS. And the United States has two objectives. And this is where people start to get a little bit confused, because ISIS and Assad, everybody's like, well, they're Muslims and they got the same belief. You guys, is completely different. Remember, Assad, first of all, is backed by Iran. That's their first relationship. And then Iran, one of their partners, is Russia. So Iran introduced Assad to Russia. But Assad is more loyal to Iran than they are to Russia. I mean, Russia's helping them, but they're all helping each other. But ISIS, okay, that's a Shia relationship. ISIS is completely Sunni. It's a Sunni. It's radical Islam. It's Sunni, the Caliphate. That's what it's all about. So that's how it's all separate. A lot of people are, it's the same group, and it's chaos, and it's all over the place, and nobody knows what's going on. We know exactly what's going on. It's very separate. So the reason McCain states that we need to take out ISIS and we need to take out Assad is because if Assad wins, that means the Shia Islamic Revolution is gaining power. We don't want that. ISIS is completely separate. If ISIS wins, that means Sunni radical Islam is gaining power. And so we need to stop both. Do you guys understand that? Both need to be stopped. And it's two separate issues. So he even defines it even more, and we'll go on here a little bit. Point number 4, Senator McCain repeatedly states that the Tomahawk attack on the airbase was simply a first and very small step to achieving the broader Mideast goals. And people need to be aware about that, because, it wasn't like his opinion. He's like, hey, he's telling everybody, hey, things are in motion. Things are in motion. Things are coming down the road. Number 5, pointed out the United States is interested in taking out Assad with troops, or the United States is not interested in taking out Assad with troops, but will assist those who can and will, which is a Free Syrian Army. And I want to be able to point this out. And there's a little bit of a repeat here again, because he points out a little bit later. But remember this, you guys. The United States was supporting the Free Syrian Army, and they were kicking the crap out of Assad. All right? But then everything changed. Assad got backing from Iran, and then through Iran, Assad got backing from Russia. Next thing you know, Russia's got a naval base in Syria. Hallelujah. See how all this stuff works out? But, Assad was losing. It's that simple. Number 6, Assad's success comes from involvement from Russia and Iran, which we stated before those countries got involved, Assad was losing the war. Number 7, McCain talks about President Trump changing his mind on the Syrian conflict. We all know what he campaigned on. All right. And I've talked to you, especially in my group, people have been listening to me for a long time. I've talked about this before, and I'll make a little bit of highlight. When you are president, McCain pointed out, you get more data and the picture looks completely different. And I've stated this before because I've had a chance through my formal education where people that they were part of giving the president their briefs. These guys were historians and these guys understood policy inside and out. And that's where I found out about the reports that the president got. And here's the thing. This is what they said. That when you're a candidate and you're running for president, you can have all kinds of advisors around you and people who are very smart and been in the administrations and all that stuff and know. But you don't know nothing. This is true, you guys. You think you know, but you don't know until you're sitting in that seat and you get all the information. Then it's a completely different ballgame. That's why I think that Obama might have, been part of this, question on the U.S. dollar and how the dollar works and against it. And then when he got into office, he wasn't against it. It wasn't because people held a gun to his head or anything like that. It's because they realize how it works and what's, the system that's being there. You can't touch it. You can't mess with it. There's nothing you can replace it with. So once they get all that data, they completely change their minds. Same thing with Trump. I don't think he lied or he's a flip-flop or anything like that. I'm telling you, they understand they can have, they have enough information where they can hear these conversations they're having in Iran and Syria and Russia, their threats, what their plans are. And he's just simply going to stop it. Same thing with North Korea, by the way. So number 7, that was number 7. He talks about the point number 7 that he threw out there. He talks about Trump changing his mind, so it's not a mystery. And by the way, during his campaign, I never thought that he was going to win, you guys. I'll be honest with you. It's like I just didn't think he had the numbers. Thank God he did. I voted anyways. I mean, in my view, but I always, a lot of people ask me this is long before the presidential election. It's like, what do you think? I mean, you're kind of hawkish on Syria. It's like, no, I'm not hawkish on Syria. I'm hawkish on Iran. So therefore, we have to respond to Syria. And then, what do you think about Trump's? It's like, well, if he wins, let's see what he says when he gets in the White House, because that's a different ballgame. It's like, what do you mean? Data. That's what I mean. It's a completely different ballgame. They don't change their morals or their values or their decision-making process. They get more data. That's what's going on. Number 8, McCain comments on President Trump's advisors and states Trump has some of the best advisors he's ever seen. Probably the best country has ever had, which is true, you guys. Look at these guys, what they have, what they've done. These ex-generals, specifically the Secretary of State and all these guys, thorough backgrounds. Very, very, very good guys, very good gentlemen, good Americans. They will protect America. He also states the president does not need to go to Congress, and this is one of the issues coming up with Rand Paul and all these guys, talking about the War Powers Act. And you guys, look, here's the thing. I don't like Rand Paul, all right? He's a conservative. He'll probably vote the same way that I would vote on domestic issues and stuff like that, but I don't like his dad, and I don't like Rand Paul, and I'm going to throw out my opinion out there on that, because I believe it. So these guys, what they do is they go back to their home base. They stir up their constituents with conspiracy theories and stuff like that. And I'll take them to court. They want to go to court. I'll go to court with them. This idea on, what's threatening us and stuff like that. It's complete lunacy. These guys are isolationists. And we'll do another audio to where we'll go over the exact facts on every time we've ignored our enemies. And every time we said, well, that's not part of us. And then next thing you know, they're a threat. It's cost us more treasure and more lives than if we would just take care of it at the very beginning. When someone threatens and you got these people, going around and killing people and stuff like that, it's like, well, it's not our problem. It's, you guys, it is our problem. And we need to take care of this stuff before it explodes. And I completely reject these guys and their isolationist views. I mean, it's real simple. Look at, 5,000-6,000 years worth of history on, you have these cities and city-states from the very beginning. Then you have nations, empires, and it's very simple. Either you're growing or you're dying. That's it. There is no in between. It's an illusion. It's a lie. It's beta male at the best. It doesn't work, you guys. It simply doesn't work. And I can't stand these guys that try to push that type of stuff. Because they make the United States vulnerable and weak. I got to go to commercial break, you guys. I'll be right back.
Do you like what you're hearing on Patriot Radio America? Well, you're not alone. Thousands of listeners tune in for each and every presentation, looking forward to the information and a new way of seeing how the world really works. Want to share your business, product, or service to all these listeners? Well, now you can. Patriot Radio America is growing, and part of that expansion includes marketing for businesses just like yours. Our special introductory offer includes your ad on every show for a month for the mere price of $100. To participate, simply contact me, Bob Adams, the program director, by email at bobadamsradioamerica@gmail.com. That's bobadamsradioamerica@gmail.com. Your message will be aired to our eager listeners, and while there are lots of ways to market, you can't beat word of mouth from a trusted source like Patriot Radio America.
Welcome back. Very interesting. Point number 10 real quick. Wolf Blitzer asked about the disasters and getting involved in the Middle East. And McCain points out he goes through the steps, you guys. In Libya, what did we do? We bombed Libya. We got rid of Gaddafi. But what people don't realize is that wasn't the plan. We weren't just supposed to bomb them, get rid of them. We were supposed to help them rebuild. We didn't. That's a failure of the President of the United States. That's Obama. That's a leadership failure. Lack of insight. Then what about Iraq? You guys, we had the Iraq War won. The United States military should get credit for winning 2 wars in the Middle East. They did. Actually, there was 3 objectives, but we won 2 wars, and then we also protected our currency from Saddam Hussein selling oil for euro, which is a huge threat to our national security. But then he pulled our troops out. It was done. What about Afghanistan? So what Blitzer's doing is he's like, what about all these disasters? And McCain's trying to say, look, the disasters are based on decisions that we made after the fact. So it's not just going in there that's creating disasters. We get in there, we do what we're supposed to do, we finish our objective, and then we always get some idiot to pull us out or not fulfill our goals. And it makes America and the Middle East and the world it makes us more vulnerable. It's that simple. So I'm with McCain on this. I don't believe that we went in there and then it's like, oh my God, you guys screwed it up. No, we didn't screw it up. There were specific people who screwed it up, and one of them is Obama, and that's pretty much ends the list. We were winning the war in Iraq. We won the war. They pulled us out. They created that vacuum. Everybody knows what happened. Now you're looking at a caliphate. Not only that, but Iran got bold. All of a sudden, they're brave, right? So anyways, John McCain goes through that, and that's a very, very important part of some of the problems. And the reason he said that, and the reason that was brought up, is because he's trying to tell people we're not going to make that mistake again. That's what he's trying to tell people. Number 11. On the refugee issue, he comments on the conflicts are causing the problems for the exact same reason that we just talked about. So basically he's saying, let's win the conflicts. This will stop the refugee problem, and also will vet people trying to come into the country. But McCain has no problem with people coming into the country if they're properly vetted. And that's fair. That's fine. Like, these people aren't trying to come in as citizens or anything like that. And he's talking about, listen to specifically what he said. The people that helped our troops, the people that helped our cause, until we find a safe zone for them in the Middle East, we can help them out a little bit. I think we need to be cautious on that. You guys, we can create a safe zone in the Middle East. It doesn't have to be specifically in Syria. We can do it in northern Iraq. We can do, there's a couple places we can do it. So the last comment on McCain, and we'll get into the second interview here, is that the numbers, you guys, 400,000 people have died in the Syrian war so far. And it's also caused 6 million refugees just out of Syrian war. All right, so it affects Western Europe. It affects the Middle East. It affects everybody. The United States have been, and so that, the issues, again, we don't want the Shia revolution to expand, which is separate from the Sunnis, which is the Caliphate, the ISIS, radical Islam. They've actually attacked us. So we got to stop them on two fronts. And that's what these guys are looking at. And the refugee problem is a problem for everybody. And if we can tackle these issues and stop it, create a safe zone, guess what? We don't have a refugee problem anymore, and we don't have to worry about people coming to our country that want to harm us. Anyways, folks, we'll actually, this is what I want to do. Bob will go into the second interview, and then I'll do a little bit of commentary on it. So thanks, folks. Be right back.
The use of media materials is protected by the Fair Use Clause of the U.S. Copyright Act of 1976, which allows for the rebroadcast of copyrighted materials for the purpose of commentary, criticism, or education.
Senator Graham, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I think a lot of people watching what happened last night assumed it was a one-off, a response to the use of sarin gas in Syria. You are saying, however, that the United States ought to add 7,000 troops on the ground.
That we need more troops, like we have in Iraq.
Right, in Syria, like we have in Iraq, to depose Bashar al-Assad.
No, to defeat ISIL.
So not to affect regime change?
No, regime change comes when we train up Syrians. The Syrians will take care of Assad. ISIL's a direct threat to the homeland. Assad's not. I'm not suggesting that Bashar Assad is going to attack America. I do believe ISIL would if they could. And we have about 6,000, 7,000 troops in Iraq. And if we had about that same number, we could take Raqqa sooner and we wouldn't have this Kurd-Turkey fight. More Arabs would join the fight if you had more American troops. So I think you're going to see a ramp-up of American troops, not as frontline fighters, but trainers, advisors, special forces to take ISIL down quicker. I'm proud of President
Trump. A whole new war is what you're calling for?
No, an end to an old war. The war has been going on for 8 years. It's not a new war. It was.
No, I mean the war in Syria. We haven't been involved in the war in Syria for 8 years.
No, and it's been a disaster for us. Look at what happened in Europe. Look what came from Raqqa, Syria in terms of Europe. Radical Islam has flourished under the Caliphate. Radical Islamists are being appearing everywhere. You had it in Switzerland. In Sweden. So what I want to do is destroy the Caliphate. And the way you destroy the Caliphate is you take Raqqa.
But I guess it's a little confusing. I don't think anyone would disagree that it's been a disaster in Syria for the Syrians and perhaps for the Europeans.
And for us, eventually.
How exactly has it been a disaster for us? MS-13 has killed far more people here than
I can tell you that if ISIL could hit us, they would. The San Bernardino people are connected to radical Islam. We've had attacks here at home. I would just say this about President Trump. I'm proud of him. He did something Obama did not do. And if I'm North Korean, I'm going to think differently about Trump because he told Assad what would happen. Well, he didn't draw a red line. He just acted.
So it's a little confusing, though, if you take 3 steps back from Syria. So here we are fighting, there are 2 main players in this. The biggest ones would be the ISIL-backed forces and the government of Assad.
Exactly right.
And we're fighting both of them. Meanwhile, we're arming a third force which has ties to al-Qaeda.
Okay, so what are the threats to America coming from Syria? Do you agree ISIL is a threat to America?
Sure. I mean, I don't think anyone's supporting ISIS. The question is, what's the best way to fight them?
I'm saying that the only way to destroy the Caliphate is for somebody to go on the ground and kill them.
But we seem to be fighting both sides. No one would disagree that Bashar al-Assad is, of course, killing far more members of ISIS than we have.
No.
Right.
No,
but now we're fighting him too, so you can imagine why the average person is a little
He's
confused.
not killing ISIL, he's killing the opposition. Assad is a threat to the region and eventually a threat to us because he's backed by Iran.
But he's a secular leader who's against ISIS. We're against ISIS.
Right.
So.
He's a puppet of the Iranians.
Sure, that's okay. And Russians are formed too.
Iran is run by a religious fanatic. Iran's not a secular state. Iran has missiles on the side of which they write death to Israel. I think the Obama deal with Iran is the worst deal since Munich. I think Assad is a puppet of the Iranians, and the Arabs are not going to accept giving Damascus to the Iranians. As long as Assad is in power, ISIL and al-Qaeda can't be destroyed. I tell you, audience.
But hold on. I'm just losing. I just want to see if I understand this. So I can't tell who the main enemy is here. You've said that ISIL is the main enemy.
The main enemy, I think.
And then you said Iran is the main enemy, but they're fighting each other. So
not really. So
I'm confused.
Okay, radical Sunni Islam hates the Iranians because they're a bunch of Shiites.
Right.
They hate us too. How are we connected here? Radical Islam and the Sunni side did 9/11. I don't think Iran is going to attack us tomorrow, but I think if they had a nuclear capability, they would share it with terrorist organizations, and our homeland would be at risk. They chant death to America, so both pose a threat in a different way. But I'm more worried about Iranian expansion right now than I am ISIL in Mosul and Raqqa.
Okay, so I thought you were more worried about ISIS. That's why I was a little bit confused. So, but wouldn't it be the perfect scenario if we have two enemies who are fighting each other to not intervene in that conflict because we're the beneficiary of our enemies killing each other?
Not at all, because the bottom line is that Assad's not trying to take down the caliphate. Assad is trying to take down the opposition. The Russians, 80% of their airstrikes have been against Syrian opposition, not ISIL. I think, quite frankly, Assad has actually done oil purchases from ISIL.
Okay.
Anything that creates imbalance for us is probably good for Iran and Assad. Here's what I would say about the president. He acted decisively when Obama did not. Hope North Korea is paying attention. ISIL is Germany and Assad's Japan. Here's what I would do.
Okay, I just wanted the implications of what he did are fascinating to me. Your compatriot Senator McCain said yesterday when asked, well, could this lead to a wider war with Russia, said, in effect, bring it on. He did. He said, we'll beat them. They will lose because we are superior to them militarily. Nobody doubts that. The question is, why would you want to go to war with Russia, too? Are you for that also?
No. What I'm for is giving Syria back to the Syrians. I'm for two things: destroying radical Sunni Islam, ISIL, and other groups inside of Syria, so that it won't become a safe haven for terrorists like Afghanistan was before 9/11. And I'm for replacing Assad, not by the Americans, not by the Russians, not by the Iranians, but by the Syrians. And the way you replace him is you train Syrian opposition people to go take him on and eventually beat him because he has a poor hand.
Okay, but that would not include the ISIS allied groups that we're fighting now, and it would not obviously include the government groups we're fighting now. It would not include the Iranians who we hope to fight, or the Russians, who we're happy to go to war with, or perhaps the North Koreans who might want to go to war with you. I'm losing track of some of the wars. I guess my question is, what would this cost if we did what you're calling for, 7,000 American troops in Syria? How long would they be there, and what would that cost?
Well, I think they'd be there long enough to defeat ISIL. They'd have to stay in some level.
How long do you think that would take?
As long as it takes to help train a Syrian opposition to get a peace deal in Geneva. The way the war ends is through political reconciliation. Right now, Assad is winning. He's backed by Russia and Iran. Assad was on the ropes 4 years ago, and Obama refused to act against sound military advice to help the Syrians because Assad is a cancer in the region. He's a destabilizing force. He will never be the legitimate leader of Syria in the eyes of most Syrians in the region, so he's got to go. And he was on the ropes, and you know what? Obama gave him a pass, and now Trump's got this mess on his watch. Here's what I tell President.
What would it cost? What would it cost to do what you want to do? 7,000 troops there indefinitely. What would it cost
I can't put I'll get a number for it. I can tell you what it costs.
Did you not think through what the cost might be when you called for it?
It's minimal compared to the threats we face.
So for the amount that we spend in Iraq, which I think most people would say is worse off than it was when we started, we could have educated every single person in America through college.
I would say, well, this is the world. How about this?
I mean, cost does matter.
Do you think we'd have been better off to have some troops in Afghanistan before 9/11?
I think it's worth thinking through the cost because, again, we spent more than $1 trillion in a country that's worse than it was before. And our country's getting poorer every year, so that's a real concern. That's all I'm saying.
We have a good TV show. See, here's my view. You think you can be saved by just leaving those people alone?
I don't believe that.
Okay, well, how do you engage the enemy when all of us stay here?
I don't think you should. I'm merely saying that money is real. It doesn't just exist on an abstract level, and we have a limited amount of it. So it's fair to ask what it might cost.
Well, our national security interests can't be monetized. What are the threats we face? I think ISIL is a threat to the homeland. The sooner we destroy them, the better off we all are. I think Assad being a puppet of Iran means the war never ends in Syria, and that's not good for us. It's not good for Israel. It's not good for our ally, the King of Jordan. I think on September the 10th, we didn't have one soldier in Afghanistan, one embassy, not a dime of aid, and we got attacked anyway. I think radical Islam won't stop fighting us, even though we don't want to deal with them. So here's what I'd do if I was president. I'd leave about 8,000 to 10,000 troops behind in Iraq to make sure ISIL doesn't come back. Are you okay with that?
I suppose. I guess I think, like most Americans, I'm pretty skeptical about starting an entire new war.
But you don't want
given the track record of the wars that you've supported so far has been, I think most people would say, abysmal.
Here's what I would say, that the world's better off without Saddam Hussein. The world's better off without Gaddafi, I think. Okay. I wouldn't want to live there.
No. Thank heaven we don't have to. We're out of time. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Imperial foot spa. Full body massage.
Wow. I get the full body massage. Oh gosh, they start from my head all the way down to my toes. It's sensational.
Foot reflexology.
I like the place. It's very accommodating, clean, professional. They focus on designated areas if you tell them to.
2095 North Dobson Road, northeast corner of Dobson and Warner in Lely Shopping Center, Chandler, Arizona.
Certain place that's bothering you, they will concentrate on that.
Oh.
480-812-1689.
Again, what a great interview. What a very informative. He dissected, Senator Lindsey Graham dissected exactly what is they're looking at, the separation of ISIS and Syria, Iran, and the relationship with Syria, with the relationship with Russia compared to Iran. You guys, very informative. Very, very good interviews. I loved them. Anyways, the first highlight is that he wants to add 7,000 ground troops against ISIS. So that's not against Syria. It's not against Assad. He's saying the same thing as McCain. Exact same thing as McCain. Number 2 points out that we have 2 objectives, and that the 7,000 troops are for ISIS only, and then that will support the opposition fighters in Syria, and they're able to win. Because remember what McCain stated, that the opposition was winning the war until Russia and Iran got involved. So even if they're involved, you guys, we can mess with the math a little bit, and the way that we support them, we can completely do the same thing we did in Afghanistan. What did Russia have? They had advantage in air power. What did we do? We gave the freedom fighters Stinger missiles. Right into that, turn it to a stalemate, boom, gone. That was the end of the USSR. That was one of the reasons why the USSR is gone. We can still do that. There's a lot of options on the table, and I'll talk about that a little bit after the interview with Oliver North. Number 3, radical Islam has flared up under Barack Obama. And so basically it's not just a stab at Barack Obama, even though it is. And, Barack Obama didn't handle it correctly. But he's saying, here's the mistake, and we're not going to make that mistake again. We need to squash this stuff. Do you guys realize that you guys, Iran and Syria and all these countries, I mean, we can completely destroy them. They're not the type of threat that what you think. The threat is the little skirmishes that they can get away with, like these small chemical attacks or terrorist attacks. You know, and the world's getting sick and tired of it. These guys want to fulfill their own destruction. They want to fulfill their own, you know, doomsday prophecy. Hey, keep it up. Actually, they've already done it because everything's being set in motion. And we'll talk about the Russian threat and all that stuff here in a minute, because a lot of people are like, oh my God, we'll talk about that. Well, there's a couple things that we can do. Number 4, second objective is to take out Assad. The keynote that here's the state that he states is clearly Assad is not a threat to the homeland like ISIS, and that's basically what McCain said. We're fighting, number 5, we're fighting both sides, ISIS and Assad. ISIS is Sunni radical Islam, and Assad is a puppet of Iran and the Shia revolution, and that's very important. Remember, you guys, Assad is his main partnership first is with Iran. Secondly, it's with Russia. And I know Russia gets a huge upside to all of this. But, it's if Assad has to pick between the two, he's going to pick Iran. Number 6, states on the big threats in the region. The Arabs will not accept Iran's Shia revolution in the takeover of Damascus. This is going to cause a war between the Sunni and Shia all across the Middle East. If this does not stop, this is very important that the Shia do not expand. And so you have the Shia revolution going on, and what do they say? They say they want to make Damascus as one of their capitals. They've declared Damascus as one of their capitals. What's a direct threat to the south of that? What do you have? You have Saudi Arabia, and they're Sunni. They go to a different church, if you folks don't know. You guys, I mean, if that will cause a massive civil war between the Muslims, and people say, well, who cares? That's a good thing. You guys, I mean, I understand there's a tactic that we take our enemies and we pit them against each other, or we kind of divide and conquer that way. But you guys already have seen the fallout by this stuff not being taken care of. Europe's being invaded. That's the fallout. All right, so we need this stuff. We don't want this type of stuff. We need real stability in the Middle East. So if you can't do anything, then yeah, divide and conquer. But why do that when you can make sure that Iran's not doing anything to anybody? Stop the revolution. Why do that when you can completely destroy radical Islam, which is ISIS? There's other groups and stuff like that, but you guys understand. It's more efficient if you do that, because then you don't have to deal with them as much. Same thing with North Korea. Why are we still dealing with this guy? The North Koreans. And, it doesn't make any sense. How weak. How weak. We need to take care of them. We need to, give them a chance. I say, give them a chance to step aside. That's obviously been done for the last, 20, 30 years. So they're not going to step aside. And we're done. We're simply done. If you guys listen to the last audio, that we did, and it talks about the legal structure on why we can do what we did in the Middle East, and how we already had a non-compliant agreement that if Assad used weapons, that we would strike. The only difference is Obama never, he never followed through. Trump's like, no, we're going to follow through. And we have an agreement, a legal agreement. And so the Russians, and nobody can do anything about it, because that was the agreement. So number 7. So let me go through this, because this is a little bit long. States Iran and ISIS not connected, and further points out ISIS has attacked us. And he thinks that Iran would attack us by giving capability to sects and groups that would attack the U.S. Both pose a threat in a different way. Out of the two, Senator Graham points out he is more worried about the Iranian expansionism compared to ISIS and the Caliph. Both pose a serious threat. One of the questions from the host, Tucker, he brings up the argument that letting both sides fight it out. That's what we were just talking about. This will weaken each side, and that's a good thing for the U.S. and Western Europe. Senator Graham explains this would not work, because Assad is simply not trying to defeat ISIS or the Caliphate. He is trying to defend Syria from the opposition within Syria. So you guys, they're not going to defeat each other. Assad, his goal is completely different. He's not in defeating ISIS. He's just trying to maintain Syria. And so, the plot thickens, right? Anyways, number 8. Also, on the Russian issue, the Russian is fighting ISIS. And this is a good thing. But when in fact, he points out, and this is empirical data, and this is what people don't realize. When in fact, so actually let me read this again. Also, on the Russians, and the issue of Russia is fighting ISIS. And this is a good thing. When in fact, 80% of the Russian airstrikes are on the opposition against Assad. In Syria, Russia is not making a big effort to take out the Caliph and the ISIS. He is protecting Iran from protecting Assad. And that's interesting. If you go look at some of the videos on, the Russians they're pounding their chest, hey, check us out. We're fighting ISIS. And then all the kiddies around the planet, they all love Putin, and Putin's doing it all right and all that stuff. The people in the Middle East are pointing out, it's like, that's not ISIS, you dorks. That's actually Sunni opposition. And the Russians know this. The Russians know that you don't know. So they take advantage of it. And so they're not defeating ISIS. They're defeating Assad's opposition. And remember, if Assad wins, what's that mean? That means that the Shia revolution is winning. And we can't have that. It's not just Assad himself. It's not that isolated. It's Iran is what it is. It's a reflection. It's a proxy war, ladies and gentlemen. Number 9 Graham points out that Assad was losing the war and against the ropes. Obama refused to help the opposition in large measurable help. This signaled Iran and Russia that they could get away with backing Assad. And since then, Assad has reversed the war. And what does that mean when Assad is winning? Again, it means Iranian Shia revolution is expanding. So you guys got enough there, but let me go into this next clip, and it has Oliver North, and then we'll kind of wrap this up a little bit. Thanks everybody for your patience.
The use of media materials is protected by the Fair Use Clause of the U.S. Copyright Act of 1976, which allows for the rebroadcast of copyrighted materials for the purpose of commentary, criticism, or education.
Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack was launched. It is in this vital national security interest of the United States to prevent and deter the spread and use of deadly chemical weapons.
That was President Trump last night announcing the U.S. missile strike against a Syrian airbase. Now, the U.S. Navy, they launched 60 Tomahawk missiles. 59 of the 60 hit the target with only one landing in the sea. Now, the Tomahawk missile is a very effective choice for a strike like what we saw last night. It is a precise weapon. It can be fired up to 1,000 miles away. Joining us now with more is the host of War Stories, our friend Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. Colonel, we have the images. 59 out of 60 targets, pinpoint accuracy, all missing on purpose the chemical weapons that were stored at that airbase. Tell us more about this incredible weapon and the professionalism of our military.
Well, let's start with the idea that if you want to send a message, you can send flowers, but if you want to send a message that matters, send cruise missiles, and that's exactly what the president did. The good news about all this is that, one, no U.S. casualties. I remember well that what happened when we did this to Muammar Gaddafi back in the 1980s and President Reagan launched. We didn't have these kinds of missiles in the quantities that we now have them. And we lost an F-111 with 2 airmen. That didn't happen last night. The targets that were struck were all pinpointed well before they were launched. The GPS coordinates were plugged into them, and those missiles were ripple fired so that there was about a 4-minute span between the time the first missile hit and the last missile hit. And as you pointed out, one missile misfired and went into the sea. The bottom line of this is that Vladimir Putin now knows that if he wants his stooge, Bashar al-Assad, to stay alive, he ought to get him out of Damascus and make him Eddie Snowden's roommate in Moscow. They deserve each other.
Colonel, when you look at the accuracy here, I mean, they got 1,000 pounds of munitions, each and every Tomahawk missile, 18 feet long, 2 feet wide, flying at low altitudes, 600-mile attack here.
Right.
And 59, they took out 20 aircraft in this attack. It is almost precision perfect.
Well, it was.
I mean,
and Sean, one of the things that's important, because there's a lot of back chatter right now about whether this was a legitimate target. Shayrat Airfield was a legitimate target. It's all military. It's all revetments, aircraft, ground support equipment, the fuel farm, the air traffic control radars, and Syrian aircraft, as you point out. The bottom line of it was this was a proportional attack in a vital national interest of the U.S. in effort to deter the Syrians, or in fact others, from doing this kind of chemical attack again. And that means it was not only legal and it was not unconstitutional, it was the right thing to do and the right time to do it.
You know, it's amazing the professionalism of these guys. Colonel, do you see any potential response? I don't see it from either Assad or Russia, although Russia's trying to do a little phony saber rattling as we speak.
Yeah, I think that the collateral damage or the unintended consequences is one of our sister, well, I guess they're not even relatives, but another network is now talking about. It appears to be that the only unintended consequence is limited to the small handful of Trump bashers in Congress. By the way, shamefully, one of them is a U.S. Senator from Virginia, Tim Kaine. He ought to have known better. Look, there's very positive consequences of this. The Moscow, Tehran, Damascus troika of terror is coming to a close. It's going to get unraveled. And other than Pyongyang, Vladimir Putin doesn't have any friends that matter. Number two,
good point.
Assad is in real danger of a coup from his generals. If he goes, Hezbollah loses their logistics lifeline from Tehran through Baghdad and up the Euphrates River Valley into Lebanon. These are very positive consequences. North Korea's chubby little despot and his Ayatollah allies in their new ICBM joint venture is now in jeopardy, and he knows it. And one thing, I differ with one of your previous guests. The Turkish strongman, Tayyip Erdogan, has been prancing around with Putin and musing about pulling out of NATO. Well, guess what? The music just stopped. And Erdogan has suddenly realized, maybe I better back up my NATO relationship so that I'm not the next one to go.
I'm going to write this down. Chubby little despot. Colonel,
he is.
Good to see you, my friend. Safe home.
Appreciate you. Semper Fi.
And Semper Fi, my friend.
Thank you for calling Crosstalk. This is Tony.
My question is in regards to Israel. I know they're sitting on, basically floating on oil.
So go ahead, Sean. I know you have a couple more questions. Oh, I've got a million questions. You just tell me when to stop.
For your opportunity to have a conversation with Tony on Crosstalk, call me at 541-946-8721.
Welcome back. So let me, just a little bit of commentary and I'll let you guys go. Great program, you guys. I loved putting this thing together. I mean, in my view, there's a lot of information here and it kind of cuts through all the BS. But again, I want to respond to some of the accusations that are out there that, the Putin's the right guy. I mean, what is he? What are people trying to portray the Putin lovers out there? That he's some type of orthodox reformist. If you're that stupid, you're that stupid. I mean, you guys, I'll do an audio. We can point out all the stuff that they're doing and how they're doing it. And there's nothing, reformist and orthodox or Christian about it. Now, I understand that leaders of countries have to do stuff where people get killed. So that's not the issue. It's not that. It's not protecting your country. He should get a medal for protecting Russia because he's doing a good job. But the idea, there's these out there, these questions. There's always a question from the Putin. It's like, well, where's the proof? Where's this? Where's that? And then when the United States does something, they've got all the proof. And where did they get the proof? They Googled it. And so somehow through Google, they're able to get more information from the CIA, or than the CIA, the NSA, and all our foreign intelligence agencies. You people out there who believe this and you're dot connected like that, you're lying to yourselves, all right? Maybe you don't know that, but now you know. You're lying to yourselves. But the other thing is that, the issue that really that is a threat to us is Rand Paul and isolationism. All right, he's just flat out wrong. He's always been wrong, and his dad has been wrong. You guys do realize, McCain made a statement, and I know a lot of people don't like McCain. I don't like McCain. He really, really pissed me off when it comes to domestic issues. He made us vulnerable. So that's what my question has always been for the guy. It's like, how can you be a hawk on foreign, protecting us on foreign policy, and be a complete disaster on domestic policy when it counts the most? This is our backyard. I mean, this is our home. So anyways, and I've never heard an answer. I've never heard a real answer. But, McCain is correct that, we can't sit idly by. We can't wait for them to come to our shores. Remember, you guys, the Russian, the USSR and stuff like that, the way that these guys talk, it's like they gave it up. Like they had a decision one day and they had a revelation. It's like, hey, you know what? The USSR is not working. We should try something else. You guys, the reason I got crushed is because we crushed them. We completely stopped them from expanding. And then after that, we took away their money. How do we take away their money? We dropped the price of oil. And that's what they depended on. It wasn't a choice. They didn't have a revelation. Same people are in charge. No different. And, you want to look at it's like, well, how do you know? I mean, what's the system? What tells you? Because there's no separation. It is the state and only the state. All you have to do is look how they run their companies and all that stuff. They took, the companies went private. They took all the private companies away. Now they're state companies again. That's how we know. So it's not, so people need to stop lying to themselves and get out of this Putin conspiracy theory that he's some type of Orthodox Christian reformer. Here's what's amazing, you guys. In Russia, they are setting up to where you can do prayer in school and all that stuff. They're trying to, they're trying to get out of that, but they're not there yet, obviously. And they still have designs on creating a welfare system based on conquering other countries. Russia's always had that. If you go back and you look at how the USSR was ran, how did they expand? If they didn't believe in capitalism and they didn't believe in that type of trade, how were they making their money? They were taking a percentage. So let's say they would take 1/5 of what they took from countries they conquered. They would take that, and that 1/5 would pay for all the citizens who are in the USSR. And when that ran out, they went out to the next weakest country. It's that simple. There's nothing outside of that. All the ideology, the Marxism, and how the Marxism kind of greased the wheels is just a facade. It's garbage. It's for the weak. That's exactly what they were doing. And by the way, that's exactly what Islam did. Islam, they created the welfare system. I don't know if you guys know that. They created it. It's like, oh my God, how humanitarian. Well, people, that sounds humanitarian, right? They don't tell you how they paid for it. How do they pay for it? 1/5 of everything they conquered went to feeding widows and kids. Hallelujah, praise Jesus. Aren't they the nicest people on the planet? So they were taking care of their widows and kids with stolen money. Yeah, absolutely humanitarian. Yeah, we all need to praise God for that one. But that's what they're doing. That's what Russia did. The Soviets copied that. It's an exact copy. Okay, so they say it's different, but that's what they're, So what did we do in the United States? We stopped the money coming from on one end because they couldn't expand. If they can't expand, they can't take that percentage to pay the people inside of the USSR and keep them happy, even though they were miserable, but as happy as they can without committing suicide, right? The second part of our attack on the USSR, so we stopped them. Ronald Reagan was the first president to get in there, and we actually stopped them. Up until that time, whoever Russia wanted to take over, they would take over, and they did. They were successful all the way up until Ronald Reagan. So we went from a defensive country to an offensive country, and we've been kicking everybody's ass ever since. And then we had a president in there, President Obama, our last president, wanted to stop the whole thing. And then all of a sudden you saw Russia for the first time start growing a little bit again. You guys understand the issue here? So we're going to stop that. We're going to go back. We're going to reverse. We're going to reverse it. Go back to the original plan. We're going to be an offensive country again. Russia's not going to attack the United States. Russia knows we'll kick the living crap out of them. And people keep pointing out, it's like, well, they have nukes. Well, we have nukes. So if they want to go through that process, You know what? Push a button. Push a button. Let's see what happens. I don't say that to be macho, but they're not going to push a button, you guys. They know the truth. They know they can't handle the United States of America in a war. But they've gotten away with these proxy wars, and especially during the Obama administration. It's not going to happen anymore. So they keep us busy by dealing with pressure from China and with North Korea and all these, and that's what, it's like, it's an attrition war. It's an attrition war, but it's going to stop. So let's switch gears here a little bit, all right? We understand that isolationism doesn't work because of what I just talked about. Rand Paul's, he's you had Jimmy Carter, which, didn't do a damn thing. And then what did you have? You have Iran and all these expansion, of our enemies. He got out of there. We had Ronald Reagan and reversed that. Then you have Obama, and then all of a sudden these exact same enemies came back and they're on the map again. You guys understand that? That's empirical data. That's, people can't get around that stuff. That's not an opinion. So what can we do? What can we do to Russia if we don't want to go to war with them? You know what I mean? I mean, without getting into a military conflict. What did Ronald Reagan do? Let's go back in history. Ronald Reagan got into office, and I talked about this in another audio, where you had this transmission belt, or there was a war between the price of oil. Now, when the price of oil is high, guess what? Venezuela, or actually all the OPEC countries and Russia, they make, they're geniuses when the oil prices are high. But when the oil prices are low, guess what? They turn into the country that they represent, which is isolationism and Marxism. Then there's no growth at all. Remember, unless they're expanding by taking over countries and taking a percentage of their booty and paying for the citizens, there's no way for them to grow. All right, well, Russia has oil and natural gas. So, there's a little bit of a outlet for them, and they can kind of be capitalistic about it. Well, great, that all depends on the price. And that's what we can do. We drop the price per barrel to $20-$30, and just completely just kill them. You can have all the designs you want, but you're not going to have any money because you're a one show, you have one trick on the table. That's it. And that's oil and natural gas. And, we'll go through another audio because there's more to that's going on in the Middle East, that Russia is threatened. But we can handle that. We can handle them. We don't need to get into military conflict with them. We just drop the price of oil. That's it. You guys, we don't need the oil from the Middle East. We have enough oil here and off our shores. I don't know if you know that. Plenty of oil. Plenty of oil. So we can get Saudi Arabia to turn, their faucets on. And then we can put a little bit more out. And then, it's a done deal. So we're more of a threat because of that to Russia than Russia will ever be. By Putin taking his shirt off and threatening this and threatening that. What's kind of funny is the articles that are coming out. Putin and Iran's putting their foot down and they're threatening the United States. Yeah, they threatened the United States for the last 8 years under Obama because they knew they can get away with it. So they haven't said anything new. You guys realize there's nothing new that they've said. The only thing new on the table is we got a president that actually followed through. That's the only thing that's different here. And it scares the bejesus out of them. Because Trump's not messing around. He's not messing around. He's not going to stop. And there's nothing they can do about it. If they try to maneuver and try to do something on the military end, Russia and Iran, you guys, there's stuff that they can do, but they got to create an image for the folks back home in Russia and stuff like that. We all understand that. But they screw around. Our first thing that we're going to do is another and a tougher sanction, and then we're going to drop the price of oil. And then it's over. Lights out. Just like the USSR. Nothing new here. Nothing new here. So anyways, look, you guys, I'm going to wrap this up because we've been going on for a while. And any questions or anything, any comments, please, patriotradioamerica.com. Love to hear your comments. Bob Adams has a number up there. You guys can leave a message on, whatever it is that you want. Just make sure it's clean because people are going to listen to it. God bless you. I hope you love this video. I hope you were informed, and I hope you kind of can dissect what's going on in the Middle East and the different players, a little bit more. There's a lot more to it, you guys. There is, and I'm going to be able to do an audio for you guys, how it built up to that situation. So it'll come on down the road. But until the next audio, everybody, God bless. Thanks all.